Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Hey,
Whoa.
I'm Beetlejuice here. I'm here to talk about my movie, Beetlejuice.
How could you say it 3 times?
I know, we're screwed. We've never seen Beetlejuice before this week. We finally watched it for the first time ever. Daniel, why did you miss out on Beetlejuice? Have you ever even heard of this movie until now?
So I actually did see Beetlejuice when I was a kid, but I remembered nothing about it. We watched it in camp when I was like in elementary
Okay.
school. And so as I was watching it this week, I was like, this is not a kid's movie.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, well, I wouldn't say not at all. There are definitely elements of it which would appeal to children, but there's stuff for a PG movie that would not be in a PG movie today.
Yeah, there are a lot, and I wrote some of them down. There are some jokes that would not be in PG movies normally.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If they make, well, it's confirmed that there's Beetlejuice 2 on the way, but they will have to, they're going to have to change the Beetlejuice character, I feel like. There's certain things he did in that movie I really don't think would fly today. I mean, they didn't fly back then. They shouldn't have done it then either. But today, they're definitely going to have to change it, I think. So I'd never seen it. I saw pieces of it on TV when I was a kid. I didn't really know much about it. And I'd always wanted to watch it, and for some reason I never did. So this week, when they officially announced the release date for Beetlejuice 2, I figured now's the time to go back and watch it. So I'm very curious. I was telling the folks at home that I was very curious to hear your thoughts, because to me, this felt like, I don't really, I know you're not into horror. This isn't really a horror, but it definitely has elements of it meshed with comedy. I just don't know where it would land for you.
I enjoyed parts of it, but I was mostly bored because there was nothing to really draw me in that much. In that I didn't feel emotionally connected to any of the characters. Like you really, I felt like for the couple, right, who become ghosts, I felt like you could have built up some real emotional stakes, right, of them trying to like find their place in the afterlife. And they do, right? Like they find that role. Spoilers for Beetlejuice 1. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, right, they get to be parents. And at the beginning, they talked about how they wanted to try to have kids again, right? So they had set up this idea that they've like failed to have kids, right? That maybe they tried and they couldn't have any kids. And then they die. All these dreams are lost. You know, they lose their home, but then they end up getting to find a happy life in the afterlife as parents to this girl. And she also, you know, she was always this weird girl. Now she finds a place in the world too. And like those elements were there, but I didn't feel emotionally bought in at all, which meant like I just didn't care and was kind of bored. So then, okay, what's the other thing to draw me in is, okay, like just seeing interesting stuff, right? There's just kind of like wonky, interesting things going on in the afterlife, but I didn't find like that wasn't that interesting to me either. Like I'm just seeing weird things without any real, I don't know, underlying principles for me to like learn about the afterlife. It's just like, here's a bunch of weird stuff. And then here's this weird, honestly kind of annoying character of Beetlejuice who I was like, I just didn't want him in the movie. Like I just found him so annoying and just gross to look at. So I don't know, like the movie did some interesting things, but overall I just kind of felt like I had to fight my way through it.
Wow, so this movie has a nearly 40-year-old legacy, but Daniel's coming into town to set the record straight. I agree with some of what you said. I do think the first maybe 20 minutes of the movie set up a really interesting premise. And I love the way they slowly realize they're dead. They're like, I don't think we survived. And they find the book for the recently deceased. And I love there's that one throwaway joke where he's like, a handbook for the recently diseased. And she's like, not diseased, deceased. I'm like, there were a couple of jokes like that in the movie where I'm like, it's just a person being dumb for a second. But it made me laugh. And I think that is the big question. The movie primarily functions as a comedy. I found the movie pretty funny. I didn't find the Beetlejuice character annoying, actually. I thought, especially the way he's playing against really straight-laced people, and he just comes in so bombastic, I found him funny. Honestly, some of the difference might have been that you watched it by yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like comedies definitely work better with a group. So I was watching with a couple of other people, and we were all laughing together. Like that first scene of Beetlejuice on the TV, and he's just like yelling into the camera, like, come on down. I couldn't even hear half of what he said.
So that I found really funny, and him calling himself a bioexorcist.
That's a hilarious idea.
That is hilarious. So yeah, upon reflection, I think I'm ignoring, like I did laugh a lot during the movie. And I think that's a little unfair to like forget. Like the bioexorcist joke, I was laughing a ton. His whole TV ad was just so funny.
Yeah, or when the football players like,
Yeah.
hey, I don't think we survived. He's like, you think? It's like, how could you have been in the dead people waiting room with all these living corpses around you, and you're like, it takes you a day to be like, I don't know if we're alive, actually.
And then the idea that the afterlife has this like really inefficient bureaucracy, like the afterlife is just administered by like a really bad DMV. Like that's a really funny idea.
Yeah, so I found all that stuff really funny.
Yeah.
But I do think narratively, the movie is a complete mess.
Yeah.
I'll completely agree with that. I think Tim Burton elevates the movie with all of that weird stuff, done a lot with practical effects, which just automatically makes it more interesting to me because you just feel that real presence and you think somebody made that with their hands. Hey, not to put down CGI. I mean, that stuff is really impressive, but we've just seen so much of
Yeah.
it. It eventually wears off. So I enjoyed the movie on that front. Really fun, really funny. And it's also a unique brand of funny because you have that weird, unsettling surrealism of people realizing they're no longer alive and trying to navigate the afterlife. But then everyone has this nonchalant attitude. Like, yeah, we're dead, whatever. Like, oh yeah, there's a ghost in the house. How can we profit off this? Like,
Yeah.
nobody's scared. So that's not something I've seen that much of, which is surprising considering how old the movie is. So sometimes classic movies you've never seen suffer a little because they've invented some new things that have since become cliches. And then unfairly, that movie suffers, even though if you had seen it first, you would have thought this is really unique. But the uniqueness of this movie had not been worn off. It did not wear off for me. And part of that might be because it's been a long time since I've seen a Tim Burton movie.
I'm increasingly feeling guilty for my rant against this movie at the beginning because like we keep bringing up things and I'm like, oh, that actually was like really
See,
funny.
I knew you were going to go hard at the movie, but I knew if I went first, I would accidentally change your mind. That's why I wanted you to go first.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm going to make this look worse by cutting the video and reversing it. So it looks like after all this, you're still like, okay, all right, Gil, let me tell you, this movie sucked, okay? Michael Keaton, great actor, annoying, shut up. An example of this movie being really messy, just all of a sudden, it's about Beetlejuice trying to marry Lydia.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, we have to stop this wedding. And then at the end of the movie, Lydia gets home and she's like, I got an A. Can we do that thing we talked about? And the thing she wanted was to, I guess, dance while floating.
Yeah. Which they introduced earlier in the movie because they did it at the dinner party, making everyone dance.
True. It just, I can't, would a 15-year-old or however old she is really think like, I'm going to work hard in school. I'm going to get an A so I can dance while floating. Because she could dance anytime she wants, but she wants to float dance with a football team ghosts behind her.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That was my dream when I was 16.
It's still my dream. In fact, I'm offended that you are crapping all over my float dance dream. I mean, if we get a harness and a wire, we could probably make that happen for you. Hey, sign up for the One Take Patreon. Help find Daniel's dream. He needs this. Look at him. What else does he have? He doesn't even like Beetlejuice. Do you think there's any real kind of satire or meaning to this movie?
I was going to ask you that actually, because you have this this family. I was going to call them yuppies, but they're not yuppies because they're not up and coming. Like they're already rich and stuff. I mean, they're definitely. I think there's some satire of sort of the meaninglessness of their lives, right? Of the wife is like this bad sculpturist. And she's got this agent and she wants to think like she's this like really important artist and she's going to like create a whole artsy community in this neighborhood. Right. And it's just like very goofy and silly. So I think they're like making fun of that. The husband is like just any way to make a profit. Right. He's like, I could buy up this whole town. These dumb townsfolk don't know the value of their real estate. Right. I feel like it's just poking fun at the absurdity of these people's like desires.
Right. And then you contrast that with the dead couple, and I guess they find real meaning by becoming essentially adoptive parents to Lydia.
Yeah.
Did you get the impression, by the way, that the conclusion is that they've basically become her parents, and her biological parents are like living in the attic now? Like they've become the ghosts? I looked that up. I asked ChatGPT. I was like, are they living in the attic now? And it was like, there's no evidence in the movie of their revised living situation. But that was my impression.
I didn't follow particularly like the
Okay.
attic point, but like they did kind of take over as the main parents with the
Kind of weird.
yeah
Think about it.
with the original parents being like there's still someone involved, right? Because you hear them like one of them goes like, oh, I guess she got an A because they hear her like singing and stuff.
I'm gonna rewatch that scene. I think they're living in the attic now. Like they have become the ghosts. That's the impression I got. MJ, are you gonna weigh in here? Look, I'm looking like an idiot up here. Like I don't even know this movie. MJ says that she would want to float dance because she's weird, as you said.
Hey, I'm not weird.
Well, that was another thing I found out is like, well, maybe I misread this, but she has the goth aesthetic, which I took as an aesthetic choice that she likes. But at the end of the movie, did she kind of ditch a lot of that? Like she wasn't wearing the hat anymore. Now she was like hanging out with people. And it kind of seemed like the movie was teaching you, stop being weird, all right? Be normal, go hang out with people, get good grades. It was sort of anti-Tim Burton.
Well, one could potentially
Wait, Guy Incognito, by the way. He hasn't seen the movie, but he agrees. Guy, that's why you're Guy Incognito. All right, go ahead, Daniel.
I was gonna say maybe the movie could take a position that like the goth aesthetic and stuff is a little antisocial in that like when you kind of dress up that way, you're kind of telling people you're different, and maybe it does make it harder to become like friends. And so maybe the point is she's been able now to embrace some more pro-social behavior and aesthetics that will allow her to make friends, but she still has an outlet for her unique personality, which is like having these ghost parents. And so maybe it's talking about like a way to find belonging in the world.
You notice all the conversation we're generating, trying to understand the deeper meaning of this movie.
Perhaps somebody could make a video called What Beetlejuice is Really
Perhaps a werba is a foot. Werba is the internal name we use to refer to what blank is really about, because that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So we invented the acronym werba. I'll just clip this out and just release it as what Beetlejuice is really about.
Yeah.
Daniel, any other thoughts on Beetlejuice?
Oh, I took some notes. I didn't write down notes
You wrote these notes down weeks ago.
before the writer's strike.
That's right.
Oh, well, I was just gonna make the point about like the movie is very adult in a lot of ways, and there were some actually pretty clever, funny jokes when Beetlejuice at one point I think he gets like grabbed by somebody, so he shoots all these like thorns out of himself. And so then he's got all these thorns sticking out of him. So one could say he's very thorny. And so then he gets a desire to go to like basically like a strip club. Now replace thorny with a slightly different word to describe
Take the
that.
T out of that word. It's a very different word.
By the way, wasn't that a clever way for me to tell this joke?
That was really well done.
Yeah. So I actually like as I watched that scene, I actually started laughing a lot. I was like, that's a really funny wordplay that once he has all these thorns sticking out of him, he starts feeling this way.
MJ says that Daniel is outthinking Gil. Hey, I could stand up here and make up a bunch of nonsense too, but I'm trying to keep it real, which is what I always do on one take.
Thank you, MJ.
All right. I guess that probably, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. Ask me.
One last point
Okay.
before I ask you. A lot of non-PC stuff as well, obviously.
Right.
We've talked about that. But just even the last scene with the Native American guy who like shrinks people's heads.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the ending of the movie's Beetlejuice's head. And he's like, hey, what's going on here? Actually, I kind of like this. It's a pretty good look for me. Let's wrap up Beetlejuice.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really say what we think about the fact that they're making a sequel.
That's what we're going into right now.
Oh, okay.
So they had announced, they've been talking about Beetlejuice 2 a lot. And right after the first movie came out, there were talks of a sequel. They had an idea that was going to be, I think, Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian or Beetlejuice Something Hawaii, because they thought it would be funny to put him in the brightest possible backdrop and have that contrast. That never came together. The talks have come up again and again over the years. Then finally at CinemaCon, a few weeks ago, they were flashing up a bunch of logos, and one of them was Beetlejuice 2. So people were like, wait a minute, did they just confirm that Beetlejuice 2 is happening? Then earlier this week, they announced it officially. Beetlejuice 2 is coming out September 6th, 2024. Same day as Blade from the MCU. But that is one of the movies that has stopped production thanks to the writer's strike, so good chance that's going to get delayed. Beetlejuice 2 is not being delayed because it's already written. And in fact, they said they were going to start filming on May 10th, 2 days ago. So that movie should be filming now as we speak. Tim Burton is returning to direct. Michael Keaton coming back as Beetlejuice. Winona Ryder is going to be Lydia again. And she'll have a daughter who will be played by... If you had to cast a girl in a new Tim Burton movie, she does great with the goth aesthetic.
I know, but only because I saw the thumbnail for this video, and I was going to say to Gil, hey, who is this woman in the thumbnail? The whoever that actress is that plays Wednesday Addams.
Jenna Ortega. Jenna Ortega will be playing Lydia's daughter. And then Justin Theroux has been cast in a yet-to-be-revealed role. Who's Justin Theroux? I didn't recognize the name. I looked him up. He's written a bunch of stuff, acted in a bunch of stuff. Right now, he's in White House Plumbers, the drama series about the Watergate scandal. Who's writing it? So it's being written by Alfred Gauff and Miles Miller, who worked with Burton on Wednesday. They actually created the show. They're the ones who pitched it. So sounds like this, if you liked Wednesday, the Netflix show, seems like you're probably going to love this movie. Now, if you look at these writers, this is the question I always ask. When a movie's announced, is it going to be good? I look at the writers. I say, what else have they done? And they have a bit of a mixed track record. The Mummy. Tomb of the Dragon Empire. So the third Mummy movie. Shanghai Noon. I remember liking it as a kid. Shanghai Nights. Spider-Man 2.
Wait, both Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights, was it Owen Wilson?
Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan.
I like those movies.
Yeah, there's the moment where Owen Wilson is like, I'm invincible. I can't be killed. And he just walks out and gets shot out a bunch of times, and all the bullets miss. It's hilarious. They also wrote Spider-Man 2. And Herbie, Fully Loaded. And then, of course, Wednesday, which I didn't watch, but I know people love that show. Jenna Ortega dancing. People love that scene. I saw it all over TikTok. So, yeah. What do you think about this movie? What do you want to see? Are you excited for it?
Wait, did you say, is Michael Keaton in it to play Beetlejuice?
Yeah, he's coming back as Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm curious what they do. Like, actually, here's what I'm really curious about is what route will they go aesthetically, given like CGI and everything now?
Given Tim Burton's involvement, I feel like he would push to bring back a lot of the stop motion stuff.
That makes sense.
And maybe I wouldn't mind at all if they used CGI to enhance it, did a little bit of both. Because one of the things I really would love to see in the movie is I felt almost claustrophobic in this one. I'm like, I want to get out of the house. And then I'm excited when they draw the door, but we end up going into this dark, dank waiting room. I would love to see, and even when we first meet Beetlejuice, he's basically sitting in this like black void only lit by a candle. And maybe that is what the world of the dead is like. But I would love to see almost a Nightmare Before Christmas style underworld and see where does Beetlejuice live when he's not messing around in the world of the living. And to do that, so I wouldn't mind if they used a little bit of CGI to make that happen. And even when we go outside, it's in the sand dunes kind of place. It's such an empty place. Yeah. I would love to just see a more filled out underworld. And I want to see more Beetlejuice. That was one thing that surprised me going into this movie. Again, not knowing anything about it really, is how little Beetlejuice there was. I think he had about 15 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, isn't it funny that the movie's called Beetlejuice when he's not really the main character?
Yeah, it reminds me of that movie Kangaroo Jack, which came out, I think, in the early 2000s, where the trailers all had this like rapping, dancing kangaroo. But apparently that is a hallucination scene in the movie. And that character was really not featured very much. But they were like, we got to get people to see this movie. And what sells better than animated kangaroos? So that's probably the main thing I want to see out of this movie. In terms of the writers, I feel like Tim Burton's probably the most important part of the equation. Because like we said, the first one didn't have that much of a story. It felt very strange. The climax felt like it came out of nowhere. But it was elevated by Tim Burton. The aesthetic, the humor, Michael Keaton. Anything else you want to see in Beetlejuice 2? Any other thoughts on this? Do you agree with me? Like, no, I want to stay just in the house. I don't want to see this world.
I agree with you. I guess I did just Beetlejuice is just an interesting movie, right? I was just kind of curious to see what they did with it. So I'm curious generally to see what angles they take, maybe with like the themes in the second one.
I think probably Lydia was not very well. They didn't go much into her character. We don't know a lot about her. The fact that they're putting Jenna Ortega in this and it's from the writers of Wednesday tells me she's going to be much more of a focal point. It's not going to be about a couple. It's going to be probably, again, my guess is it's going to be about her, which I think they're going to develop her character more and probably try to get into some more developed themes. Is my guess.